Welcome back, everybody. Today I'm going to be making Gorditas de Azucar. Basically, it is a sweet gordita that is something my grandmother loved to make us growing up. Now, this version is the way I like to make them when I want to achieve a soft and tender gordita. But my grandmother's version is just as delicious, and I'm going to show you both ways. Okay, to start, I'm going to be using 3 cups of sifted all-purpose flour. And to that, I'm going to be adding 2/3 cup of sugar. Sorry, I had to think about that for a minute. I will have the weighted ingredients and measurements in the description below this video. So I'm going to go ahead and just add that right into the flour. I'm also going to be adding 1 teaspoon of baking powder, not to be confused with baking soda. Okay, so now I'm going to give this a good mix. Okay, so now this is mixed. I'm going to add 3 tablespoons of salted butter. If you have unsalted and you want to add a pinch of salt to your flour, that works better because you can control the salt content in this, but I do like using salted butter with this recipe. And this is softened butter, by the way. Okay, so now I'm just going to take my hands and just combine it with the flour. So now I'm going to take 1 large room temperature egg, kind of give that a mix and dump it into the flour. Here I have a 1/2 cup of Mexican table cream. You can substitute it with heavy cream if you can't find Mexican table cream. But honestly, I'm going to use a full cup. When I actually measured this out, I was thinking I was going to do half a recipe because I'm doing 2 separate ones. But again, I will be putting the correct measurements and weighted ingredients in the description below. Now I'm just going to work this in with my hands. So as you can see, this dough is definitely tacky and wet. I'm just going to keep kneading it till it comes together. And if you are not weighing or measuring your ingredients, you'll want to make sure that, if it's too tacky to work with, you can kind of dust it with a little bit of flour just to make it workable. But I'm going to keep kneading it in my bowl so I don't lose it everywhere. And once it gets workable, I'll start kneading it here on the counter. Okay, so as you can see, it's still sticking to my fingers. That's fine, but it's enough to where I can put it out onto my work surface, and I'm going to knead it for around 5 minutes. And I'm going to add a little bit extra flour just to dust my work surface. And I'm going to give this a good kneading. I want to get the dough as smooth as possible, but I can already tell these are going to be so good. And if you haven't noticed, this dough is pretty close to my soft flour tortillas recipe. I just obviously added the egg, the sugar, and I added the heavy cream. And my family does enjoy this, but I'm going to add a little more flour. This does differ from the way that my grandmother made her gorditas. And I will definitely show you Grandma's recipe, which is a lot easier and it is more flavorful. It has a different level of flavor that I love. Okay. So I'm going to continue kneading this for a couple of minutes. It's already getting to where I want it. Okay, my dough is really soft and tender, and it's smooth on the surface, which lets me know everything is combined well. I'm going to place it in my bowl, and I'm going to just cover it with a damp cloth, and I'm going to let it rest for 15 minutes. Okay, so my dough has rested for 15 minutes. And now I'm going to dust my work surface with a little more flour. I don't want anything to stick at this point. Let's get that. And I'm pretty much going to roll it out like I would if I were making biscuits. Okay, so I have my work surface. My work surface is floured. So I'm going to roll this out, and I do want to keep it an inch thick if possible. Well, maybe not quite an inch, maybe a half inch. Half inch will do. You just don't want to press it flat. Okay. So I think that is a good thickness. By the way, I have my nonstick griddle preheating on a low heat. We are not going to cook these on high. We're not looking for high heat. This is going to be low and slow. I'm going to dip my little glass into some flour. And I'm just going to cut this out the best that I can. If you have a biscuit cutter, obviously that would work better. Okay. I'm going to just kind of, I don't want to knead the dough too much, but I'm going to start cooking these. They're so cute. And if you see excess flour, just sort of dust it off. Okay. So here is my cute little gordita de azucar. I'm going to place it right on my griddle. Right on here. And I can probably add 3 to this pan. And again, I have this on a low, not the lowest setting. I mean, I do want them to cook, but it's going to take time. I would say about 5 minutes on each side, and just watch for anything starting to burn. Then you'll have to adjust your heat. That means that the comal is too hot or your griddle is too hot. But it is a lot slower than when you're making something like tortillas, where you want it at a medium high to high heat and you want, things to puff up. Really what you're trying to achieve is to make sure the interior has enough time to cook before the exterior really gets dark. Okay, so it hasn't quite been 5 minutes, but I can kind of smell things burning. So yeah, this isn't quite burnt, but see how it started to singe there on the end? So you got to watch for that. So I'm going to turn this one. There we go. So you'll notice as soon as you flip them over, they start to puff up. So I did have it probably a little higher than I should, so you'll have to adjust as you progress in cooking these. So this is my first batch, and these will be just as tasty, but you'll have to adjust the heat according to, I'm using fire, some people have electric, so it all depends. And also I'm cooking on a nonstick griddle. You might be using something like cast iron that really retains heat for a longer period of time, and it's a little more consistent, so you'll definitely want to work with low. So again, I'm just going to let these cook, and I'll be back when they are done. Okay, So I am done making all of my gorditas de azucar, and I want to show you. So what do we see here? Yes, someone came and took a bite. I don't mind, it's for my family, but I want to show you. I said, wait, don't finish it. I want to show them the inside. So let's see if you can see this. Oops. Okay, it's still kind of warm. As you can see, the inside is cooked through and it's nice and tender and soft. And actually, it's kind of like a biscuit. It's a cross between a biscuit and a sweet tortilla. I don't know how to explain it, but it's very tender and soft. And I failed to mention this earlier. When you are cutting out your gorditas, you can definitely cut them out, put a damp cloth over them again, and let them rest for about 10 minutes. But as I was filming and trying to get everything to work, they sort of rested on their own with the time that I had to set up camera and things like that. But that is definitely a good tip, to rest your dough after working it again. Not that you're really kneading it, but you know, the rolling out process. So anyways, these are super delicious. Oops. Here I have 3 cups of all-purpose flour. To that, I'm going to add 2 teaspoons of baking powder. I'm also going to be adding 2/3 cup of sugar. My sugar has like a tan or a light brown color because I'm using natural sugarcane sugar, but if you just have white sugar, that works as well. I'm going to give this a mix. Now I'm going to add 4 tablespoons of salted butter. If you only have unsalted, you can add maybe a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. I like to use salted butter because it really does balance the sweetness in the dough, and this is also softened. I'm going to add it right in there, get as much out of the bowl as I can. It's basically the same dough, I'm just doing something different with it, but I do want to show you how she would make her little gorditas. And I asked her why she didn't use egg or milk like a lot of other recipes. And she basically said, well, growing up, especially when I was a baby or when my aunts and uncles were younger, eggs and milk were precious. And so if she had to do some baked goods or basically things like this with dough, if she could help it, she tried to get away from using milk and egg because it was something that she really tried to make food stretch, and if she could get away with it, she would just find alternatives to create something sweet for the kids. So I appreciate that. So anyways, after you worked in the butter, just kind of with your hands, now I'm going to add my cinnamon anise tea. And I'll tell you what, the smell alone reminds me of my grandmother. She always loved to make us all kinds of natural herbal teas. We used to have a lot of chamomile tea, anise, cinnamon tea. I was speaking to my uncle not too long ago, and he actually said that he remembers my grandfather and grandmother plucking leaves from the citrus trees outside and boiling and steeping the leaves for tea. And he said he really does miss those days. Of course, we appreciate now that we can afford things and our life is a little bit more comfortable, but when you think back on childhood and sort of the struggles that families had to overcome and things they had to do to be frugal, little things like that were treats. So I understand. Okay, so this is completely mixed. So it's kind of awkward using the wrong hand here. So now I'm going to add 8 ounces or a cup of this, and I actually have a little more than a cup, so I'm not going to add all of it. I just want to be able to make the dough workable. And this is very hot. Get that out of the way. So as you can see, my dough is definitely gooey and sticky. So I'm going to keep working here in the bowl, and then I'm going to turn it out onto my work surface, and I'm going to give it a really good knead, 5 to 10 minutes. But first, let me get things together here in my bowl. And if you want to add, if you find that you're like, this is not workable, I'll show you. Just a little handful of flour, dust it in here. You don't want to over flour it because things will sort of turn out dry in the end result, but just to make it workable, that's okay. So I'll be back when this is ready to be put onto my work surface. And eventually, as I knead it, this dough will stop sticking as much onto my hands. And for those of you wondering, yeah, you could do this in your stand mixer. I just like to work with my hands when it comes to dough, but I do understand some people just are pressed for time or they just can't knead anymore. So definitely pop the dough into your stand mixer for about 5 or 10 minutes on a medium speed until it all comes together and it's smooth. So I am going to be back after around 5 minutes of kneading this dough. This dough is ready to be rested, so I'm going to place it right back into my bowl. And I'm going to cover it with a damp towel or cloth and let it rest for 15 minutes or, 10 to 15 minutes. I'm going to go 15. And then I'll show you what I do next. Okay, so my dough has rested. So all I'm going to do now, and it's really soft and tender, I'm going to just take a little bit, and what my grandmother would do is just make little gorditas with her hands. Well, she would do like the whole tuck and turn, and then she just kind of pat them. And the dough is really soft. You can hear my kids playing in the room, by the way. Okay, on to the griddle. So I'm just going to make, probably 3 will fit on here. And just kind of press it back and forth. And it was a treat for us kids. We didn't have donuts or cake. Sometimes we had cookies or empanadas, but for the most part, this was something quick and easy and a treat for us. Okay, so I have 3 on here. They're not perfectly shaped, and that's okay. That's definitely the gordita of my childhood. And again, you just sort of want to watch for any side burning. You want to make sure that it cooks evenly on both sides, flipping throughout. And I'm working with a low to medium low heat, nothing high, because it's the same concept. Low, and you want to make sure that the center cooks through. So this is going to take 10, maybe 13 minutes, just over a period of time until the center cooks. So I will be back when these are done. Okay, so these are done, and they got some good coloring on here. So obviously compared to these are more uniform, and oh, these are still warm. So I'm gonna set these in here, and there you have it, 2 types of gorditas de azucar. So I hope you guys give this recipe a try. I hope you like it, and thanks for watching.